The next week he came back, he gave the same sermon. Now they begin to furrow their eyebrows and say, what's wrong with this guy? Is he a one-hit wonder? The next week he came back, he gave the same sermon again. At this point, they invited him into the boardroom. So, Pastor Steve, we hired you because you gave such a great sermon to us and our families. And he said, well, thank you. He said, when you gave the same sermon to the congregation, we held our heads high and were proud. He said, I'm honored. He said, but then you gave the same sermon another week, and we began to think, are you a one-hit wonder? And this week you gave the same sermon again, and now we're pretty sure it's all you got. So Pastor Steve, before we fire you, tell us, do you have a second sermon? He goes, oh yeah, fellas, I got a second sermon. It's better than the first. I got a third better than the second, a fourth better than the third. And it goes on for about 100 of them. And as soon as you start listening to the first one, I'll give you the second. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear some amazing things tonight. Things that are opportunities for you to not just grow your business, but to grow your life. So my suggestion is, if you hear somebody talking, and you hear them saying something that you've heard before, instead of going, oh, I know that. Frank, what are they going to say?
Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that interesting? Because when you say, oh, I've heard that before, you shut off. You close your brain down. You start wondering how the Hawks are doing, which Frank is at right now, or the Bulls, or the Bears going to win another game this season. And you're not listening. But I'm here to say, if you will just say, isn't that interesting, you may find out a different perspective to what you already know, and actually grow. Now, a speaker this morning put a different twist on that. He said, if you feel you already know that, that's the thing you need to write down, because if you already know it, why aren't you doing it? And I've had the opportunity to read the biographies and get to know the speakers a little bit tonight, and I will guarantee you that if you will listen, you will learn. Now, tonight is all about relationships. You're going to build some new relationships. Your new best friend might be in this room right now. And I got to tell you, when you enter into a relationship, you do it in a special way. You talk nice, you present yourself well, and the language is practically perfect. However, once you get to know each other, the masks start to go off, and everything starts to fall into place. And I don't know about you, but I'm already a little bit warm in here, and I'd just like to ask, we already know each other a little bit better. Is it okay if I take off my jacket? Thank you. Because what you're going to find out is the guy in the tux isn't a tux guy. I'm a coach. I'm a soccer coach, a track coach, a leadership coach. I try to make a difference in people's lives. And that's kind of what is going to happen for you here tonight. So for the rest of the night, I'm not going to be in a tux, but that's okay. And you'll find out the name of my business when I get around to taking this shirt off. I had the opportunity just a few years ago to meet our first speaker. Really interesting story. He graduated second in Dr. John's class. To Kelly. Oh, look, they're standing right next to each other. Quite often, when I meet with high school students, I will pick out the geekiest boy in the room. Not to say you're geeky, Kelly, please don't take this personal. And I'll pick out the athletes in the room. And I'll go to the geeky guy. And I'll say, are you ready to open a business? And they'll say, yeah. I'll go to the athlete and I'll say, are you ready to open a business? They're like, what? I play football. And I'll tell the football guy, one day you're going to be working for the geeky guy. Oscar has done some absolutely amazing things. So it's not to take anything away from Kelly. I would never do that because he's amazing. It's all right. They work together. He'll say, I don't work for Oscar. We work together. Oscar will say he works for me. I don't know what the relationship is, but I think it's a good one. And I think the crux of it all started in the same place, DeVry University. I had the opportunity also to be a student at DeVry. I did not graduate, so I can't even compete with first or second. But I do know this, that the lessons I learned at DeVry, how to play ping pong, pool, football in what is now a parking lot, carried me a long way because I'm a coach, and that's really all I'm supposed to do. Oscar is going to talk to us about strategy. Excuse me. There we go. That's better. And just in case you're wondering, it's Coach Papa. All the kids call me that, as well as my adult clients. And if you go to coachpapa.com, you will find my website. So, strategy. Do you know where you want your business to go? Have you set a plan? How many of you were able to get here on time tonight? You had to have a plan, right? How many of you knew the traffic was going to be bad? So you left a little earlier. A lot of the things that Oscar's going to talk about aren't a lot different than your plan here, only he's going to talk about how it's going to take your business and take it to the next level. If you are not interested in taking your business to the next level, you may want to leave the room now. Everybody staying? Good. Please take the time to listen to what he has to say. Take a few notes, and if you think you know that already, just say to yourself, isn't that interesting? Oscar Estrada.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I didn't expect a response. Okay, so I get the privilege to talk about strategy focus. And looking around the room, most of you probably are looking at the opportunities to how to strategize your business. And I'm actually going to challenge you to look at it a little bit different, and as well as a personal, as well as a career, as well as a family objective, because it actually applies in all aspects. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start a little bit back of my history, so everyone's aware of how I came about, why I'm in front of you, and being able to speak in those terms. So, Chicago native, born and raised in Chicago. So for those that are actually originally from here, I actually was one of you. One that really surprised Professor Colliers every time I bring this up is that, unfortunately, with the streets of Chicago, I happen to be a member of a gang back in the day. And DeVry literally changed my style. So when we look at strategy, I'll explain to you how that works. Strategy, you need to have a vision of where you want to go. And then you have to select a team that's actually going to get you there. And I'll explain how that all comes into play as far as your personal and career-wise, right? So yes, I do hold Professor Colliers accountable for not being the valedictorian in class of '96 for DeVry. It's a fact. We actually can pull the transcripts of 1996 Chicago campus, and Kelly beat me by, I think it was almost 0.2%. But the reason, sure knows. But the reason that I was actually able to graduate with Kelly was that Kelly and I challenged each other throughout class. And so Professor Vasilew's here, Professor Monbrad, would actually always tell you that when you see Oscar and Kelly walking down the hallways together, you know they're up to something. And it's true. Most people will remember us because of Kelly. Kelly, not to put too much in there, but he would actually, and there's a reason for it, Kelly, so it's coming towards the end. Kelly would challenge Professor on a particular topic by page, number, paragraph of certain things. All I would do is reference Kelly because he knew who he was doing. So we were the yin and the yang, and I am proud to say that after 17 years, not only did I meet my wife at DeVry University, Maribel Jeff, But my best friend, best man at the wedding was actually at DeVry, and there's a huge relationship with DeVry from that standpoint. So the way it worked is that my vision back then is I wanted to get out of college as soon as possible. So my strategy is how I'm going to do that is to pick the nerdiest guy in the classroom and get through it. So, you know, there was some, Kelly would tell you, we would spend nights and doing projects, and we both worked full-time. Unfortunately, at that time, Kelly had kids, I didn't. So he had more of a responsibility than I did, but at the end of the day, there was 3 of us out of a total class of 87 that went through the entire program that were able to stand in front of going through the entire business operation program and be proud to say that we actually did it. And it's Marvea, Kelly, and myself. So I just wanted to point it out, how it started from a career or you know, educational side of it. So to give you a little background, you know, 17 years in the industry of 9 different industries out there. Started off in the automotive industry, aerospace, consumer product, you know, and we picked a little bit on Kelly, so I'll pick on the next or the third speaker, and I'll give you a little story how this worked. Jeff Cartwright, first time I'm going to actually share the stage with Jeff Cartwright, and that's a name you got to remember, because I remember from the back in 2002, I think it was, he invited me for lunch. He said, hey, I have a vision. Here's my strategy. I'm looking to turn the plant around to be able to keep it in the U.S., let alone Columbus, Indiana. Remember that discussion, Mr. Jeff? And he says, I need to turn it around quickly enough that we don't send it out to China or Mexico back in those days. So everyone could sense the tension that was going on. I think it was Old Charlie, by the way. So I give him my idea. I say, well, we first got to look at your direct reports because they have to be aligned to your strategy. You know, it's a great compelling business need. So remember the compelling business need, CBN. And that's his vision. The problem is he didn't know how we're going to get there in a short time frame. So this is a guy that eventually, through time, his comment was, if you have to say more than you can fit in the subject line of an email, it's too much information and I'm not going to read it. So I had a lot of work in front of me. And so you didn't think I remembered it, did you? So then I told him, well, the first thing you need to do is you have to have a right staff to get you your vision and understand where it's at. So what do I mean by that? In an organization, you have what we call silos. So in a procurement group, and Jose knows exactly what I'm talking about, because Jose over at this table sitting by the 2 professors, by the way, you're going to learn more from them than I did. Jose ran my operations in my first plant that I had here at Chicago, Federal Mogul. Kelly run purchasing. Guess what? They didn't think alike. Why? He was more worried about efficiency, how fast he could run the machines and get product out there and build inventory. Kelly was worried about working capital, about building inventory that he would rather. He said, Kelly would say, hey, if we're going to eliminate opportunities, we need to look at our total business case. So they were actually arguing between the two. And I told them that we need to look at the big business piece. So what happens, they created silos. Kelly was working on PPVs, purchase price variance. He was working on efficiency. Metrics doesn't mean anything for a total business. The objective is that we didn't want to be in a firefighting mode. We wanted to be a strategic, perspective of looking at how do we keep the business. And both of these guys will tell you, our view back in Federal Mogul was that we were actually going to shut those doors down. Remember that? And what happened is that we put the right team, by the way, as I mentioned to you earlier, at Federal Mogul, we had mostly everyone that reported directly to me was from DeVry. Forecast manager, Derek Chajinski. Probably remember some of those, Professor Nick Power, he was branding after. Oscar Ortiz as our buyer, who worked for Kelly, who was the purchasing manager, who Jose was actually going through some of the training with Professor Clares at the time. And what happened was we had a strategy that we not only wanted to keep the doors open, but we wanted to reduce all the inventory cap that we had out there that we were spending expediting products in and out, right? And because we had a focus and alignment, what we would call strategy deployment, that focus on what we wanted to look like in 3 to 5 years, We kept that plan going, and we reduced our inventory. That allowed us to to strategize that we would take all the new business for the automotive industry. Anyone working through the automotive as a tier 1 supplier will tell you that is not an easy task. And Jose's smiling because he knows exactly what we're talking about. So now, going back to Jeff, at the restaurant, had a vision. So I told him what we needed to do. You would think he would hire me at the spot. Not a chance. He actually told me, you know what, I appreciate your comments. I'm going to evaluate my team and I'll get back to you. Didn't hear from him for 6 months. I mean, he took a long time. So then he comes back and says, we got about 2 years to turn this place around. Otherwise, we're going to have to turn this over and probably look at China or Mexico or I don't know where in the world you got Kentucky in the mix, but that was all over the mix. So, just to give you an idea of his vision, resin pellet. Anyone have dealt with the resin pellets? Got a little pellet product there. End of a car seat, right? For those infants that were going in a car seat. It was about, the lead time was about 4 weeks, right, Mr. Cartwright? So, what would you say after we were done applying everything from his strategy of vision, focus, of putting some team structure in place? How long, and for those that know the answer, please don't ruin it, Lou. How long do you think it took from 4-week turnaround from taking an order from a Walmart, Target, Kmart, any of the big consumer of an actual car seat that you would put an infant, all the way through the distribution center? By the way, the distribution center, you gave me a third of what we actually had, right? So he made it smaller. He said, figure it out. Thanks, Jeff. So how long did you think it took from a resin pellet, 4-week, finished product with all the labels, to the distribution center? Anybody want to take a check? Yes. How long do you think it took? 4 weeks.
Me?
Anyone?
6 months.
From 4 weeks to 6 months? We were going backwards. From 4 weeks, a customer takes an order, calls it to an actual end of the product. How long do you think it took? Anybody?
4 days.
4 days. You want it? I'm sorry?
A week.
A week? 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Don't believe me, do you? Well, data drives, right? So Jeff actually said we had 2 years to do it. You asked Jeff when he comes up on the stage. It took us 8 months. 8 months to turn that plan around and bring it out there. And that's because of his strategy and his focus and his determination. And we said we're going to put it together and get it done. So the things we've accomplished at Federal Mobile was potatoes when we started dealing with the Walmarts of the world to get it actually done. So it works. And the reason I'm in front of you is the fact that I used the same principle that Jeff and I put in place there. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, I had dealing with him in 4 different companies, and we applied the same thing. Senko, Igloo. Jeff used to be the president of Igloo down in Houston, Texas. Same thought process. He had a backlog. I'll let him talk about it from there, but at least I'm setting the stage for him. But in reality is, and if you don't believe me, there's an article out there from Fortune magazine that actually called me a liar. And the reason for that is they brought some engineers to come out and do a time study to validate that we actually were able to do that. And unfortunately, Jeff, we only did 13 minutes. And the reason for that was that the product that they followed was a Canadian product that added 6 more labels on the car seat. So unfortunately, we didn't meet that. But what happened was is as soon as a person would buy a car seat at Walmart, and you scan it, that sent an electronic order to us that we were able to turn it around within 13 minutes and put it right back into distribution to meet our demand. Same reason why I'm actually here is for the fact that we actually started up an organization to allow me to actually see my vision in 3 to 5 years to spend more time at home. And right now we have 2 kids that are growing up way too fast, and Professor Basil, get ready. These girls are actually smarter than Maribel, so don't, and I can't take the credit because that's all Maribel. I hate to read, as Kelly will tell you. But these girls are ready to go, and I got to share with you, Caitlin got nominated to be 1 out of 60 in the state of Wisconsin for math and that's all because of you teaching Maribel, so I had nothing to do with it. But at least I get to actually enjoy the fact that here I have 2 future DeVry graduates coming with the back experience of Maribel Estrada. See, I can at least say Estrada. By the way, it took her 8 years to finally change her last name. I think she was validating that process. You can tell I said that. So, the purpose of it, you have a vision. You have to have a timeline on what you want to look at and how to get there. And the only way you're going to get there, as Tim mentioned, team's a big factor. You've got to select the right team to get there. So from a career standpoint, from an educational, My team was Kelly. From a marriage standpoint, 17 years coming up in June 20th. By the way, I cheated, it's on my ring. On June 20th was my wife. She was my best friend, and she actually got me through. And you know, as you guys all know, we have issues facing it. We have a game plan of what we're doing, so we're applying the same principle. And from a career-wise, it's the same thing. As you talk to Jeff, as you talk to some of the guys from Federal Mogul, they'll tell you the objective is we got a goal we're going to go after. We got the right team in place. Jose, did we not have fun?
Oh, yeah.
We had a hell of a time. And now we're trying to get back in Chicago so I can pull my people back together so we can do it again with our eyes closed, right? So the objective is put a plan together, pick the right team, and then go after it while having fun doing it. And there's nothing that can stop you. Things are limited and impossible. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk in front of you. I look forward. It's always a great opportunity to come back to Chicago. And this is awesome to be able to pick on Kelly after all these years. So thank you very much. So.